What?
What is it?
A brilliant idea.
Well?
That's what we need, a brilliant idea.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a part of this show, so just don't encourage me or pay me any mind at all.
So what's your poison, bro? Les Paul, straight up Gibson? No. Classic Strat, am I right?
Oh, I don't have what it takes to play guitar. I mean, I'm no Joe Walsh in the brains department.
If you can see, the numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board. 11,
Right.
11,
And most of
11, and then
amps go up to 10.
Exactly.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
Who did you put us down as on the audition list?
Wombat Vengeance. Thought of that name myself.
That is the worst name I have ever heard of in my life.
I have a sound in my head, and so far it's not like anything we've done here.
You think we don't know what you're talking about when you say, take my hand?
What do you mean? It's about holding hands.
You watch your mouth.
You know who's got hands? The devil.
Well, we gotta get going.
No. Stick around. Hang out with us. Cool. Yeah, we'll stay and hang around with you.
Yeah, stick around. Hang with us. Hi once again, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner, the man in the arena. I am a rock and roll junkie. Have been since I was a kid. And out of the thousands of interviews that I have done over the years, what I've always wanted to focus on at a point in my career is talking to musicians, great musicians, people that you know, people that you don't know, people on tour, and just get those great stories. Because most of you who know me know that I've covered sports, the big part of my career, and I've talked to great legends, and I've gotten great stories. But to me, there's nothing better than the stories that are told by rock and rollers, by musicians that crisscross the country. And out of this time, I was determined that my guest here today was going to be a guest of mine one day. And I've never had the opportunity to do it. Now I do. Why? Because I'm in control, baby. And I make the rules. And there's a great story behind how this gentleman and his band changed my life in rock and roll. If you have any sense of rock and roll whatsoever, you know the band, you know his name, you know the music. So let's stop hearing me babble and let's get right to it. It is a pleasure to welcome into the man in the arena, the man who made Grand Funk Railroad go years ago and still does to this day. Mark Farner is my guest on the show today. Mark, this is one of the most fun things I've ever done. Thanks so much for being here, my friend. Oh, man.
That's a damn good answer, Ed, and I appreciate being here with you. I love your enthusiasm.
Oh, man, and before we get started, I'm going to tell you a story just to start everything off, and I repeat this to friends of mine over the years. Grand Funk Railroad was my first rock and roll love, and it happened because of my mom. Out of all things that could possibly happen. We used to live in New York, and we always traveled to Florida. My dad got a camper and a pickup truck, and we used to go down to Florida for several weeks. So we did that whole 95 U.S. run through there.
Oh, yeah.
I was a kid. I had my first cassette recorder, which was one of those handheld recorders, had the cassette in it, had the AM/FM radio, and that was my pride and joy. We're driving south. We're going through South Carolina. We stop at Stuckey's for lunch, which used to be a Southern tradition, the gas stations and the taffy and all that crap that was there. I got no tapes.
The pecan logs.
There
right?
you go. The pecan log. Exactly. So we stop, and there's a plastic case that's there, and it has cassette tapes in it. I descend on the cassette tapes because my mom said, pick out a cassette, and you can have any one you want. Now, I'm a neophyte. I go right to the most expensive ones I can find, the double albums. And the first one was Woodstock. It was big at the time. There was the 2-album set for Woodstock. And I said, that's the one. Now, my mom was no dummy. She said, oh, no. No, you can't have that. No, none of that. She had heard about the fish cheer and everything else that was in it. No, she said, no, you can't have it. And right underneath Woodstock was Grand Funk Railroad, the live album. And I said, how about this? And
Yeah.
she looked and she said, oh, that's okay. She had no idea. She'd never heard of Grand Funk Railroad in her life, but she said, oh, yeah, that's the one you can have. Picked it out, grab it. Mark, I played that album until that tape broke and disintegrated because that was my very first rock and roll experience was the
Wow.
Grand Funk Railroad live album. And I have been a fan ever since.
Awesome.
And, you know, it just, I still go back to Closer to Home and Foot Stomping Music and Mean Mistreated. I knew nothing about the blues, nothing about rock and roll and the blues. So you taught me everything. It has got to be great when you hear people tell you about the effect that you've had on their life and how you've made a positive impact just through your music and doing what you love.
It's encouraging, Ed, because just to have that story right there. Thank you so much for sharing it, because I think in word pictures. I'm seeing you and I'm seeing your eyes and you're looking through that, and you go to, and then when you put that on and bam, all of that life that is on that album enters your ears and your psyche. And what a way to get into rock and roll, brother. Man, you jumped in no clothes on.
Yeah. It was feet first, because that was a time when there was like, you're coming out of the 60s, you're moving into the 70s, and you're in your early part of the 70s, and it's got a little soft rock here and there, and we're still kind of making that transition from 60s rock and roll. I had no idea what was on it. I never heard Grand Funk before.
Right.
And I just played it and played it and played it and played it and played it. But that in itself, you know, we can go back to so many different times when you were on stage and you're going through so many albums and making it together. But that still had to rank as a, well, did it rank as a special moment in all the times that you've put things down on vinyl and recorded them? When you look back at those performances, do you go back and say, yeah, we nailed it? Or do you still go, you know, I probably could have done that a little bit better?
Oh, no, I don't. I have no regrets, brother. I mean, that's the nice part about knowing what I know and being spiritually free. I don't have any regrets, because that would put me in debt. And man, I'm in the business of setting myself free. Yeah, the music, the rock and roll, you can hear it in the grooves, and you can hear it in the songs and in the topics that I wrote about. People have thanked me for years for speaking the way I spoke in a song, and for being on stage and warning people about some acid that was in some of the Kool-Aid that was getting passed around. I said, don't take it. You know, it's a position of responsibility that I did not take lightly, brother. I always wanted to, you know, sing about things that were meaningful from my heart, and I wanted to do it in a way that that had a soulful connection. And because of the music that I listened to in Flint, Michigan, and part of that was CKLW in Windsor, Ontario, you know, Rose Lee.
Wow.
All the music, all of the Motown, all the R&B that came, I think that was 100,000 watt station that came booming into Flint. Yep. And it was the time that you're speaking of was also the transition from AM to FM. You recall?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
oh, yeah.
The FM stations, if you know, you get on an FM station, you're not going to hear any commercials. It's just going to be music, music, music. And the guys would play Closer to Home because it was a 10-minute song. They could go have a smoke break. They could take a leak. They could eat a sandwich.
You know, I started as a disc jockey, and I mean, a long time ago in a small radio station out in the middle of nowhere. It was one of the first things that the jock did when I showed up for my first shift. He said, now, if you got to take a dump, or if you got to smoke, I said, I don't smoke. He said, okay. Or if something else is going on, because this is the guy who had his girlfriend come in. And when his girlfriend came in, he had 2 albums, 2 records. He said Closer to Home and the live version of Stairway to Heaven, which I think came in at about 16 minutes. He said, if you ever need time, put that on. I said, but what about the music? He said, oh, you get to listen to the music too if you want.
Yeah.
But you used a word in there that I think is a great word that I think many times gets lost in an artist, specifically musicians: responsibility. And the more musicians I talk to, and songwriters especially, they talk about when they put those words on paper and then they come out in performance, that they have a responsibility to speak to the audience, they have a responsibility to be real, and they have a responsibility to take them someplace that they've never been before and let them have some fun. Mark, I don't know if the responsibility that you felt beginning in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and have carried through, I don't know if current music feels that responsibility.
Brother, I'm with you. But when I saw the impact that the Beatles had on the world, I mean, that was, let's face it, a lot of people grew their hair out because of the Beatles, and I was one of them. But I'd grease it back with some VO5, right? And just plaster it to my head to go to school. And as soon as I got home, man, it was some Prel shampoo, because Prel could cut any amount of grease. It's like using dishwasher detergent on your hair, dude.
How did you talk to my grandfather? Because I'm what, 16, 17 years old, going to high school, and I was the long hair. I mean, it was down the middle and it was long. You will never find a picture. Those pictures don't exist. I've had them all excised from reality. But my grandfather was the guy who said, I no longer have a grandson. I have a granddaughter.
Oh, no.
Swear to God. It was down to here, man.
That is classic, brother. That is classic. Thank you for sharing.
but we all had those moments. But when I listened to your music, and again I go back to, Closer to Home. My God, the emotion that pours out in it, and when you do that. And Mean Mistreater was the first song that I listened to and as a young kid, I got a lot out of it. And there was a passion in it. I think sometimes, Mark, that a lot, not all, but a lot of the current artists do it for the buck, and they don't do it for the passion. Am I overstating?
No, brother. I concur with you. You're hitting the nail on the head. And it is part of the degradation that we see taking place in the music industry. And along with the corporate conglomerate ownership of most of the radio stations now, it's a departure from moral, heartfelt responsibility. The same thing that I was talking about when I said in my songs, but it's been such a gradual decay and a gradual descent from where we were that it's almost gone unnoticed. But I said, the first time I saw a music video, Brother Ed, I said, man, here we go into the abyss. And because so many people prior to music videos, it's like WNEW in New York. The guy I was doing an interview, and he says, we polled 100 people and we asked them, what is the meaning of the song Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel? And he said, man, we got 100 diversely different, not even any two that were close.
Wow.
There was no video. Our imaginations. And this, when somebody reads a book and they go to see the movie, they say, man, that movie sucked compared to the book. Why? Because our imaginations are so much more intricate, and we need that exercise. When I read a book, I read in word pictures, and like I said, when you were talking, Brother Ed, I'm listening and I'm seeing pictures. But that doesn't happen with a music video. You see one thing, it's one thing and one thing only, and the imagination is stifled And that's part of this decay. And also, back when I first started, it was the 777 rule of the FCC was still in effect. You could own 7 AM, 7 FM, 7 television stations,
Right.
which kept it in the hands of American families. It was mothers and fathers, patriotic grandmas and grandpas who had moral conscience over what our children in this nation were seeing and hearing. And in 96, under the Clintonistas, they deregulated that shit, and the radio turned to shit over the, I'm telling you, and more people are going, well, why did this happen? Because there's one guy who sets in New York City programming for 4,500 stations.
Yeah,
Hello?
there it is.
There's no local, there's no community anymore, brother.
Well, if you go back to when I grew up in South Florida, we used to have Zeta 4, which was 94.9, and we had WSHE, She Radio.
Yeah.
And She was legendary across the board in America.
Yeah,
because the programmers there would reach through the current stuff, but they'd look for local music. And who's the local band? And does the local band have a tape when they still had tape? And you'd try and get some vinyl to them. But they would give those performers at least a chance. Now, see, I've got people who come up and say, "Oh, come on, Ed, you're just an old guy. You're not getting in with it because now you've got podcasts and you've got 1 million stations and 1 million shows. Anybody can get their music out there if they want." But that's the problem. It's not focused. It's not nurtured. It's not caretaked to the point of saying, we live in Detroit. We live in Los Angeles. We live in Dallas, New York, Miami. This is our music because, as you said, there's the guys at iHeartRadio, for instance, what used to be Clear Channel, and all the other various. They program across the board, and all of a sudden, it's saccharine. And I think that helped to destroy good rock and roll in America.
Oh, God, yes, man, absolutely. And you mentioned Clear Channel. I was doing an interview in Mexico City. I went down. The guy said, "This is the last interview that we're going to be doing." I said, "Why, dude?" He says, "Because Clear Channel just bought the station." I said, "Are you kidding me? They bought up everything in the U.S. They bought up all these foreign stations. And so the narrative that we've been listening to of late has been in process for many years as they've obtained all these properties. The voice gets bigger and the influence gets bigger. And you can say things, I'm sure you recall when the dude was talking about aliens and stuff, and people took him serious. And this was just when radio, there was no television, and the people were jumping out of buildings, killing themselves, committing suicide because they thought, that it was true. But and that's just how vulnerable we are. And God bless our country and our people. We got good hearts. This country was started with good hearts. We still got them, but we don't have the community that we used to have because of guys like you, Ed. When you were a jock, it was a community. You played to the community. You knew the likes of the community.
Yeah.
And that local stuff is just gone by the wayside.
I mean, I listened to people because we used to take phone calls. And I did news talk radio, sports talk radio for a lot of years. But when I started, I was a disc jockey, small stations. Yeah. And you had the listener line, and they'd call in, and there'd be the occasional nut job and the whack idiot. But you had people saying, "Hey, can you play this? Can you play Grand Funk? Can you play Bad Company? Can you play a little Foreigner? Can you do this for me?" and stuff. And you're listening, and if you spent any time as a DJ, you said, "Okay, this is my group. This is what they want. Hey, how about if I put something new in there?" And they say, "Yeah, give it a shot." But you're right because the music, and see, people won't understand unless they're from this era. If you lived in Flint, Michigan, and Detroit, Michigan, there was a sound of that music. And you mentioned it, the great soul music that came out of there, and the great rock and roll. I mean, guys like you, guys like Seeger, guys like so many others who came out of it. It was a gritty sound that people loved. And as soon as they homogenized that, then people went away. They went someplace else. Not because they were looking to go someplace else, Mark, in my opinion, but because the programmers forced them to go someplace else.
Absolutely. Yeah. It what a diversion, but it was like, the frog got put in to the pan of cold water and they turned it on and cooked him. And gradually, because it wasn't hot when they first put him in there, he didn't know to jump out. So he got cooked because of this gradual heat. Well, it's been gradually turning away from the hearts of the people that love rock and roll. And I got an award, a BMI award, 1975, Ed, that because Bad Time was played more than any other song that year. And it was played specifically because of what you mentioned. People were calling in. 75, you could still call in and request songs. Well, that my song was requested more than the one that went number one, even though it didn't go number one. It was like number 3 or something. It got played more than the one that went to number one because of people's desire to hear it.
Okay, so then in today's era, it's so tough to get heard. Now, well, see, okay, but wait a minute. See, it's kind of like the yin and the yang. People will say, look, it's easier to get heard than ever before. You put up a TikTok video, and we've got TikTok artists. We got people who are making millions of dollars because they threw something up on TikTok or Facebook or YouTube. So people are saying that you get a lot of music out there, Ed. People can hear more music now than ever before. But does that not still make it difficult with that kind of wide audience? It seems like people lose the desire to be maybe taught a little bit about what is great rock and roll, and they're just reacting to the pablum. I mean, it's tough for good young rock and roll bands to get out there anymore, because if you don't have dancing, if you don't have a girl with big breasts pushing her face into the camera, just like we did back in the 70s and the 80s, and if you're not doing something stupid on TikTok, the music gets lost. That to me, I think, is where I'm going, Mark. The music is lost. Dude. That great responsibility that you as a songwriter had is now gone. You don't have to be responsible as a songwriter. Put some idiocy up there and somebody's going to fall for it just because it's got a catchy hook. Maybe.
Yeah. And the shock value sells.
There you go.
They started sensationalizing the freaking weather, dude. The guy standing on his knees in a mud puddle and making it look like he's up to his waist in water. Everything is sensationalized, pushed past reality. And that's kind of what has taken our minds away to where we're pretty easily influenced by that stuff. And the last couple of years has shown me the vulnerability of our population and the gullibility that has developed because of it.
I could not think of a better word. the gullible nature. I think we just opened up a whole can of worms. I'm going to close that can real quick, because I want to get to something else, and that's let's talk about what's going on now, because it's great that you and I are talking today. Because recently, Dolly Parton came out and said, I don't want to be considered for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. God bless that woman.
Yes.
Because finally, here's a class act who stood up and said, look, guys, I've got a name. I do my music, but I don't do rock and roll. And I don't belong there. It's about time. And I wrote this on my social media page, on my Facebook page. I said, look, if you want to have a music hall of fame and have a rock and roll section, a soul section, a rap section, a country section, bring all these wonderful artists together under one roof. But Mark, they've been trying to shovel people into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame since the second day they opened that place. And I love it. It's a great place to go, but it's not rock and roll, man. I mean, is a little bit of a bastardization of what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is supposed to be.
Yes, and it's just another example of what you and I have been talking about, how the people have lost their vote for what is played on the radio. I mean, we had a say in it back when the people, when it was 777 rule, and it was the families that owned the radio. We had a say because as we've been talking about, we call in. They loved it when people would call in. And in fact, some records took off because of that. and bad time to, in particular, in my case, I can relate to it, but a lot of other records, and it was by the popularity of what the people of, by, and for the people. You know, the Constitution kind of comes in there, of, by, and for the people. It shouldn't the radio be of, by, and for the people? Shouldn't the Rock Hall be of, by, and for the people? To be honest, but when it's privately owned, the honesty is out the window. And I don't know if you heard any of the when Steve Miller was inducted, and oh my God, yeah, what he called it, I went, amen. Finally, somebody's saying what it is, because if you got one guy, you know, that owns a Rolling Stone magazine that controls this whole thing, and it's that club,
well, that's
that
it.
votes these people in, you know, the people we don't have a say in it.
Well, see, and that comes
Not
down
anymore.
to what rock and roll is, because this was part of the discussion I got into. Somebody came back and said, wait a minute, rock and roll is a mix of blues and southern blues and jazz, and it's a mix of all these various genres that came up and made rock and roll, which is why everything belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I fired back. I said, wait a minute. It doesn't make a difference where it was born of. It's what it is now. It is, this is rock and roll. You have rock and roll, you have soul, and I'm a big follower of soul in New York City. I was listening to it all the time on WABC and so many other great stations. And rap, I'm not a rap fan, but rap has its fans. And it has its reason for existence, and people love it. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But it's not rock and roll. I mean, it still comes down to that essence of what rock and roll is. So then I put it to you. What is the essence of rock and roll? What makes that stand out from other forms of music?
In the first place, brother, it is sung with the American English dialect. American English. I don't care if you're from London or you know, England, Australia. If you're going to sing rock and roll, and we've had many, many, many bands demonstrate this, they're going to sing it in American English, because American people speak a free language. Rock and roll is supposed to keep us free. It is supposed to be in the face of the man who's been trying to put his foot on our throat for all these years. He continues with the corporate conglomerate takeover of the radio, and with all of this, you know, the videos and everything that's degrading what rock and roll really is. But rock and roll is of, by, and for the hearts of honest people wanting to keep freedom alive, wanting to be the voice of that love for freedom.
It's almost like what you're saying is rock and roll, even to this day, in your opinion, is still what it was based on, which is the rebel, if you will.
Yeah.
Elvis started it as the rebel cause, so it still is a sort of like it's funny when you say that, and I don't think a lot of people in today's generation would understand that, the foot of the man and what happened. That's what rock and roll was based on. It was meant going up against the corporate entities of the 60s and the 70s, and to you, it still should be that, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
See, I don't think that's going to happen ever again, because when you hear a lot of first of all, I don't hear a lot of current rock and roll. I hear alternative rock.
Yeah.
And I hear southern rock, still a little bit in there, and I hear country rock now, which is very big.
Yeah.
But is there, outside of you and the American band out there playing it, who's really playing rock and roll anymore?
Well, I was just going to say, it happens every time I get on the stage. And, but I wanted to also make mention that the audiences that I've played to in the last year, say, are very appreciative of that rock and roll. They're more involved, like they used to be back when we started in 1969, the audience, I mean, I remember in Cincinnati, we were playing a big stadium, and the cops had a line in front, you know, of the people, and they were sitting in the stands, but the stage was set way back, you know, out past second base, and and the fans, they weren't close enough. So they bust out and they come forward. Well, the police just stepped aside because it came in such a wave that you couldn't have stopped it. There was no way of stopping it. But as soon as they arrived at the stage, it was like, oh, yeah. And the band started playing tighter. We started playing with more passion. We started, and you know, we could look into the eyes of our audience and communicate. And there were waves after wave of emotion coming that we could hear it when they were in the stands, but when they were right in front of us, brother, we could feel it. No two ways about it.
When you guys were getting started in the early days, what was that like with that passion of the fans coming back at you while you were out there? Because I've had some performers tell me that they never see the audience, they don't hear the audience, they get into their own little world, and they have to do that. But then I've had other performers who said, are you kidding? I've got to feel that audience. If I don't feel them, then my performance, I may as well just go ahead and be in the studio and walk away and not do anything else.
Right on. I'm with that person right there, because the emotional tie that we have comes from their agreement with what we are saying in song. Like when I'm doing Sin's a Good Man's Brother, and I say, say we need a revolution seems to be the only solution. Man, people's arms, their fists go up in the air. It's like, yes, oh my God.
Are they getting it, Mark? I mean, that's a point. When you do that, do you really sense that they're getting the words and they're putting the words into motion? They're not just words to them, they're actually meaning something?
Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely means something. And that's what I go back to the stage for that inspiration that I get from those people who validate me, Brother Ed, in cheering me on, in the waves of emotion that I speak of. Because I mean, physically, you can feel it. And on Shea Stadium, you know, I mean, we sold Shea Stadium out in 72 hours.
You did.
And those people were so close to us. And when they started singing I'm Your Captain back to me, I'm getting closer to my home, it was like somebody shut the PA off, and all I could hear were the voices of 55,000 people singing my song back to me. If for no other reason, I would go back every time there is an opportunity to get on that stage to relive those kind of moments. Buddy.
And you never get tired of it at all?
Never. It's part of what makes me sing the songs in the same key that I wrote them in. It's part of what puts the skip in my step. It's my responsibility to those people, to give them everything that's in me. And it's like Lance Abair told me. He said, if you come off that stage, you're wringing wet. He says, if you're not on the edge of coronary failure, you got to go back and give them one more.
I believe that.
Go back and give them one more. Yeah, man.
I've seen performers do that before, where they just get into it and they're almost dripping and falling down. I go back to, and when I was getting ready for this interview, I was thinking about a song by Bad Company called Shooting Star, which to me was a biblical moment in rock and roll history. Just the words and the way it was written and the story that it told in a very short time about how a young man became a star. Mark, you're a rock and roll star. You are, no matter Doesn't make a difference. You can be as modest as you want, but you are a star. When did it hit you that this wasn't just going to be local shows anymore, that you, the band, had made it, and that you were a star?
Brother Ed, it was the first Atlanta Pop Festival, 1969, 3rd, 4th, and 5th of July. And we were the opening band. We did not have a record deal. The band, nobody knew this band. We were a garage band from Flint, Michigan. But it just so happens that the attorneys out of New York City that were doing the legal work for the concert and for the people that were putting this big concert on, they made them a deal. They say, we have a band we'd like to put on the show, and they'll play for free. They'll play for nothing, and we'll give you a little break in the legal expense. So lucky for us that Bell, Dock, and Kushnick were the attorneys, and we got our break, because when I walked up on the stage, prior to getting there on the deck, all we could do was look out, between the slats and the fence that kept us and kept the stage and everybody backstage from being seen by the audience. But we go up and look out, and you could look and see maybe, 10, 20 rows in there. But that's as far as you could see until I got up on that stage. I mean, you could hear the emotion. You could hear the things going on. Playing frisbee or whatever they were doing. You could hear people, having fun. But the music hadn't started yet, only just on the PA. And then when they introduced us, and the guy we played 3 nights, or, started at 12 noon the first day, 7 p.m. the second day, and then 11 p.m. the third day, because the people wanted us. They wanted us to stay on the stage. But when I got up on deck and I looked out, and I saw 185,000 people. It was people as far as your eyes could see, brother. So I had the goosebumps on top of my goosebumps. And I turned to the guitar tech. I said, man, I got up pissed like a racehorse. He says, get your ass out there. Yeah. I got no sympathy from Bookman. Yeah. But we went out. And that audience, because they weren't all from Atlanta, Georgia, my God, they were from every state in the Union. And the word went out about Grand Funk Railroad. And just advancing to 7 o'clock the second day, and then 11 o'clock at night, we had the lights, we put on the show, and the people loved us. So that will be my favorite show that I've ever done for anybody until the day I die.
Did you guys, after that show, did you guys come off stage the last time? Did you, was there that moment? Did you look at each other and go, holy shit, we just made this? I mean, did you realize at that moment, were you able to grab it?
Yes, because our manager, Terry Knight, had been talking with the guys, reps from Capitol Records that were there with some of the other artists. And he told us, he says, you guys, I'm going to have a deal for you. We're going to have a record deal. And we went, oh my God, it's working. It's working, and just from going from opening act to 11 o'clock at night in 3 days, we, that was part of the confirmation that we had internally. You asked, when did you know? We knew when Terry said, we're doing a record deal with Capitol Records, man. He says, I'm gonna set you guys up. And then after he did the deal, he told us, you guys are getting more money than the Beatles, percentage wise. But that was a bunch of horse shit, because because the band We split 6%. His production deal with Capitol Records was for 16%.
Well, wait a minute. Stop there. And that's
Yes.
what people don't realize. They think that here you are, rock and roll stars. You're out there. You got albums. You got a record deal. You just told people that you guys in the band at that point split 6%. That's nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
my God, that's lunch money.
Yes. Yeah. But we were 20 years old. Mel was 18. I mean, we were just kids, brother Ed. It was like that was the biggest thing. Oh my God, we could just imagine, because we had been playing for 3 days, man. We've been playing our first album. The people didn't know, but I loved to dance. So we closed our set with Wilson Pickett's version of Land
of a Thousand Dances. Wow.
Yeah, brother. Oh yeah. And I would put my guitar down, hand it to the tech, and I'm out there just dancing my ass off and getting into the music and singing. And it's part of the soul music that I got a hold of as a young man, and part of my training, my vocal training. I listened to Howard Tate. He was my very favorite singer. And not many people really have heard of him, but man, after people go and listen to Get It While You Can, Howard Tate, oh my God, then they hear, where Stevie Wonder and Aretha Franklin and a lot of other people that were in the business, the R&B, got their chops. And Howard Tate, man, that guy, I always wanted to sing like him.
Well, there's a great question. What song can you remember that changed your life? That was the moment you knew that this is what I want to do and this is what I want to grab. Was there one?
Get it while you can. Oh man, don't turn your back on love. Oh my God. Yeah. Don't turn your back on love. Get it while you can. Once I had a good woman, fellas. Oh my God. Oh.
But that was it. That was the song that did it for you.
Yeah, man. Because Howard Tate sang that with such conviction. I said, if I can sing like that, people are going to love hearing my music, because he was selling it to me. Ed, that guy, he sold those songs with his vocal performance and made you buy that blues that he was singing.
Hey, wait a minute now. You brought up something else. What is the blues? I ask that honestly because there are so many people who will ask that same question. Now, you had Grand Funk in your title, and people say, what is funk? And then I heard somebody say, funk is blues. I said, okay, well, now I've got the guy who put it all together. So now I can finally figure out, what are the blues?
The blues is a part of your soul that is hurting so bad that the only release that you can muster is to sing it to yourself and express the misery that is surrounding your heart. And that is the blues.
That's so, see, now I got in this conversation with somebody about the blues, and they said, why would I want to be so sad? Because that's what the blues is. So now from the songwriter's perspective, answer that.
Deep feelings. And if you can convince yourself and close your eyes when I'm in the studio, Ed, I close my eyes. I never open my eyes while I'm singing, because I imagine the character of this song that I'm singing. And that is what helps sell that song, is the acting, the performance of it becoming that character to such a degree that people actually shed tears.
And there's another great perspective, because I have learned over the years and been taught by great performers that musicians are actors, and you have to be an actor because you've got to sell what you're doing. And I had somebody tell me, and I'm a member of Screen Actors Guild, and I've done movies before many times and worked with a lot of people, but they said, and I've had people tell me that they've never met more dedicated actors at times than musicians, because they're used to it. They get up on stage and you're acting. So it's almost as if you have a 16-song set, you've got to be 16 different characters, yes?
There you go. There you go, brother.
See, and people don't think about that, because that's what a performance art is. You mentioned your contract earlier. I had this in my mind. You've made it. You got to deal with capital. You guys are 20 years old. Here comes the money in little pieces as it's coming in. What was the first big, stupid, insane, ridiculous thing you did with your money? You bought or you did?
Well, it didn't turn out to be so stupid, but I purchased a 110-acre farm and used my first royalty check. It was like $69,000 or something like that. I went, holy shit, man, I can have a farm, because I always wanted to have a farm, brother. I was raised on a farm, and I worked on my uncle's farm in Marlette. He had a dairy farm. I used to drive the cattle down the road, 7, 8 years old, and I had a big stick, and I would drive the cattle from one pasture down to the other pasture. And I always wanted a farm, and I got far enough out of Flint. I got 25 miles away from Flint and bought this 110-acre farm. And it took me, a short time, and paid the thing off. And Doris and Ivan, the people that I bought from, they left me their 3 cats. And I love the cats. They trusted me with their animals. Yeah. But that was what I did with my money. I spent it on land. And I had, toys. My God, I'd buy 2 of everything in case one break. I'd still have a good one to play with.
Well, no, it really wasn't. So, come on, you didn't do anything stupid with your money. You did something real good with your money, honestly.
Yeah.
And not a lot of rock and rollers know that when you're a 20-year-old kid, you don't know what you're doing with your money all of a sudden. So now, and that opens another door here, because you're one of the greatest rock and rollers of all time. Without question. Don't give me any of your modesty. Come on, I'm going to stop that.
I give you my thanks.
You have my thanks just for being here. I love this. But how do you separate that, Mark, when you're a rock and roll star and you're on the road and you're traveling 200, 250 days a year, maybe more, 300 days a year? How do you balance a family with being a rock and roll star? Look, we're sitting in a time right now where Tom Brady can't walk away from being an NFL quarterback because he can't stand not being in the spotlight. He's leaving his wife and his kids going, hell with this, I'm going to go back and play football. From a rock and roller, you're never home. So how do you balance that, and how did you learn to balance that over your time?
Well, one of the biggest songs that I ever wrote, Bad Time to Be in Love, came from being on the road and not being home. And, I just expected too much out of the relationship that I was in with my first wife. And I was sitting at the keyboard. I was home on break, and I was sitting at a little spinet piano that I had that was in a little corridor between the kitchen and the living room. And I'm playing, and all I could hear from the kitchen was these threatening words about something about putting a 12-inch cast iron skillet through my forehead. And that's when I wrote Bad Time to Be in Love.
There's the inspiration right there.
Yeah.
Wow. But so did you ever, were you able to find that balance and
Yes.
be happy with it? Because that's tough to do, man. That's difficult.
Yeah. But I didn't find it until 78, actually. And that's when, and I'd been on the road for years, and I lived the life that you're talking about. We would lease airplanes and take all the seats out and put PA and lights in there. We had 17,000 pounds of PA and lights in a DC-7, and the only seating was from the rear bulkhead to the tail end. And we had Blood Rock and Grand Funk and all of our crew in there, and we left California after the final date. It was like we did 59 cities in 61 days.
Wow.
I mean, that's pushing it hard. And we're going home on break. This DC-7 takes off. We're up in the air, climbing over the mountains. They're pushing it pretty hard, and it's got all this, 17,000 pounds of PA and lights in there. And all of a sudden, the engine starts coughing and spitting, and the guys, these guys back then, I mean, instead of passing a joint and celebrating the last night, they lit the whole branch of the pot plant and blow it out and and hold it under your nose. And I mean, this was going on in the back of that plane. And then boom, that on the right wing, that starboard engine, it blew up, and flames are coming out from under the cowl. And I mean, you talk about dead silence, and the party turned into concern for your life, immediate concern for your life. The pilot comes on. He says, "Boys, we're turning it around. We got to go back to Oakland. We got to put this thing down, and that's the closest place." So we went, "Oh yeah, yeah." But I'm telling you, from that point when we saw all the flames, I mean, it's pitch dark outside. Boom, this thing's on fire, and when we landed and we went past all the emergency vehicles that were all lined up along the runway, we shot right past them, and we went off the end of the runway into this, like where the cattails and the swamp shit was. And as I grab the handle on the door and throw it over, I see a foot coming past my head over the top of my shoulder. It was Jimmy Rutledge, the lead singer of Blood Rock, kicking the door open and diving out into the darkness. I'm telling you, there was fear.
Wow.
There was fear.
I don't think anybody realizes how, when you're stoned, how all of a sudden you get unstoned real quick when something happens.
Oh my God, yes. And that proved it right there, brother. Oh my God.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you had one of those moments. You had one of those, what somebody once told me was a Buddy Holly moment.
Yeah.
On board the planes. And I don't think people realize it with all the dates that you did. And we're talking 70s. You're not talking about Lear jets. You're not talking about 757s. You're talking about sometimes a bucket of bolts in the plane that you're in.
Right
and,
on.
And you're not sure if you're going to make it. Did you ever have one of those moments then where you're getting on the plane, because most of the time you would get on probably on the tarmac, and you'd get up to the plane. Did you ever have a moment where you looked up and said, "Oh shit, no way, man, I'm not doing this. No, come on, man." Did you ever have one of those, and they had to push you on the plane and shove you on and drop you a joint and get you going?
Yeah, yes. As a matter of fact, when we went to Europe, we had a charter, and there was no co-pilot seat. There was only the right-hand seat, but and that's where he flew from. And that was another one of those kind of, and we went, "Oh my God, we're going to get in this and we're going to tour Europe out of this plane." The trucks were on the ground, semi trucks and everything were, carrying the gear, but we were flying. and we went to land in Frankfurt, and it was all foggy. And this guy, he came down out of the cloud, and we saw where we were. We were about a half a mile to the left of the runway, and trees, man. All we saw was trees, and went, oh my God! So he pulls up, and he does a couple of these things, and finally he's sweating bullets, dude. He is sweating. It's unbelievable. He says, I'm going to try this one more time here, but if this is not it, we're going to have to abort this and go. And he says, but I don't know if I got fuel to make it over to Shrine. I mean, it's like, oh my God, please. So we're like praying, and he comes down, and he's over the runway, but he's used up like half of it already. so he puts it down real quick and slams the brakes on. And as soon as we got to the hotel, I look in there. He's in the bar, man. He's slamming these drinks. Yeah.
The man who's got our lives in his hand.
Yeah.
But hey, if I'm going on that kind of a run coming in, I'm drinking too. There's no doubt about it.
I heard that.
I have heard rockers say, and great athletes say, over the years, that they have few regrets. Some of them have a lot, and they don't talk about them. Some of them, honestly, are very carefree, and they say they have no regrets. Does Mark Farner have any regrets over this magnificent career?
No. Not a one, brother. Like I said, that would be a form of debt. And I am in the process of setting myself free. I was placed in debt I mean, we all were through our adolescence and through our life, but we didn't recognize it as debt. And most people think, well, money debt is the debt, but what about the debt of unfulfilled expectations of other people? And they put you on a shit list. And especially if it's somebody in your family and they happen to call somebody else in the family, and then that person calls and say, hey, what the hell's going on? What? How did you hear about this? It's like we are moved out of our place of comfort by this debt. It's a weapon that has been formed amongst us. And I will not put myself in the place of regret, because that is a debt that's it's a sneaky debt. You think and debt causes you to become a victim. And I've been around too many victims in my life, brother. I don't think a victim can make a correct decision. So I'm staying away from the debt consciousness. I am setting myself free, and regret does not live in me.
You realize that you just probably set a mark for social America at this point, because we have a lot of people who are running around in debt every single day. And when we live in it, and if you think about it, music is the best way sometimes out of that debt.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Lord.
Every now and then, the old broken down sports guy gets it. Every now and then. But before we go, you're out. You're working with Mark Farner's American Band.
Yes.
I know the answer to this, but I have to ask. I mean, you've been doing this your whole life. Do you ever say, okay, I think it's time. Maybe it's time to walk away. I don't see you. I see them having to carry you off that stage in a stretcher when you're hooked to the wires, man.
That's how I see myself, brother. I can't imagine going without my fix. And I get my fix on that stage, because when I step foot out there, there is my country right there. And this whole, I don't care what size it is. I played a lot of big stages, Schweinfurt, Germany, 2 semi-trucks flatbeds backed up. And we had 3 tanks out in front that were the spotlight. And as I'd run across the stage, the turret would follow me. How are you going to ever get anything like that? You can't. And so I concur with your, estimation of what it's gonna be like. I'll suck my last breath of air on the deck, dude.
Good. That's what I want. I want to first of all say what a pleasure this has been, because as I said, you guys were the first rock and rollers that I ever followed, and I still do to this day. And I have not had a chance to see you perform live in several years. Come back down to Florida. I missed you on your recent tour when you were down here, because I was dealing with some personal issues. But the next time you're down here, I'm going to drop a note to you. I'm going to tell you I'm going to come by and see you, because
awesome.
I can't. This is like, people don't understand. When you do this for a living, it's kind of like you as a musician, when you get to meet the musicians that you grew up with. That's a moment that you have where it's fun. And this for me is fun. I can put all the nonsense away. And thank God I can do that a little more often.
Amen.
I want to remind everybody, here's a few things. Mark Farner's social media: Twitter @RealMarkFarner, Facebook @Mark Farner American Band, YouTube @Mark Farner, Instagram @Mark Farner's _American Band, and then everything with what he is doing, what the band is doing. You can go to markfarner.com and find out all about the tours. And here's what I tell you: don't go to the phonies. Don't go to the phonies, man.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a phony group out there. They're not the real Grand Funk Railroad, damn it. This is the man who did
There's a faux funk, the FAUX.
A faux funk, man. There it is. I hope we get a chance to do this again. My door is always open. I will promote everything you do, and I will help. And I hope that one of these days. By the way, are you an imbibing man? Do you occasionally still touch the hair of the dog?
I haven't recently in the past. I haven't in the past 4 or 5 months.
Okay,
but because they legalized pot in Michigan. But
I'm not allowed. I am not allowed, man. There's a lot of things that I can do, and I bring home the good bottle of wine, the big bottle. I'm not allowed to partake. It has been a long, long time.
Yeah, well, and for me, because the same time I stopped drinking, I love a good red wine.
Okay. Then here it is. When I see you, wherever that is, I'm going to have a little flask of something, which will have just enough wine for you and I to have a ceremonial glass. There it is. We'll put it in the coffee cup, and we'll tell them, no, really, there's nothing in this, man.
This is it.
This is all
what
it
are
is.
you talking about?
Oh my God. Hey, Mark, thank you so much again for all of this. You have made my day. People are going to enjoy this interview for a long, long time, as I will, and I look forward to talking to you again. Be safe, God bless, and take care of your health. Will you please?
Thank you, Brother Ed. It has been my pleasure to be with you. And if I don't see you in the future, I'll see you in the pasture.
You're damn right you will, one way or the other. Mark Farner, don't forget, markfarner.com. Check out everything he's doing with the band. Listen to this interview. Go to The Man in the Arena. Welcome to thearena.com on YouTube. Go to us on podcast, iTunes, Spotify, iHeart. There it is right there for everybody listening to us. And you can download this interview and listen to it again. It has been a pleasure. For Mark Farner, for myself, for everybody here, and all the true rock and rollers out there, I'm Ed Berliner. Rock on, true believers. See ya!
You're still here?
Are you not entertained?
It's over.
All right, hey. All right, good job, guys. Let's just not come in tomorrow. Let's just take a day.
Go home.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Go.
That's all, folks.